Hi, everybody. Welcome to this session entitled Introspection, a look into LMEA through the lens of organizational diversity, equity, and inclusion. No doubt, like for so many people throughout the world, watching the tragedy that occurred to George Floyd, finally, for those of us who have not experienced anything like this, something finally resonated deep within the soul of people across America. That tragedy was the impetus to hopefully having some rather uncomfortable conversations. I've always had diverse friends, and frankly, I've never considered race to be a factor when choosing friends. In fact, my best friend is Black, a Black man who, while growing up in Louisiana, didn't have running water in his house. He had to wait until after hours and go in through the back door to get a simple dental procedure done for an aching tooth. But times are different now, right? I contacted Matt Baruch at the national office to see if he could provide guidance on addressing concerns that dealt with diversity, and he suggested that we begin a task force that would serve as a resource for members and a lens for LMEA to view issues surrounding diversity, equity, and inclusion. So began one of those uncomfortable conversations, this one with an old college buddy who was my drum major when I was an incoming freshman, James Square. What began as an open discussion for me quickly turned into an enlightening discussion on conversations he had to have with his son about what to do if you were to get pulled over by police. That conversation led to another about how some people often feel overlooked for a job opportunity, either because of the color of their skin or because of their sexual orientation. Some are in a group, but never feel part of that group. We're naive to think that everything is perfect and we should not discuss this topic. But how do we get beyond the power of diversity? The power in a diverse group is that we come from all walks of life, all races, all genders, all upbringings. The power of that diversity makes us all stronger. I'd like to introduce my good friend and chairman of the LMEA Council for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, Mr. James Square.
Thank you, Scotty. Good evening, LMEA, and I hope that you'll spend this time with us with an open mind, with listening ears, and with eyes to see some of the things that we're going to show you and talk through. My good friend and former student and colleague, Brett Babineaux, is going to be on board with us. You also probably see Jessica Fain on board as well. And later on, Leonard Holden is going to be joining us. I'd like to start by following up with Scotty talking about those uncomfortable conversations. I'm just James Square. Some people call me Square. I usually go by Mr. Square, but just over the summer, taking on the role as dad and leader of my household with everything going on, I had to start to look at some things differently. The conversation Scotty was mentioning was this. My in-laws and ex, they all live in Texas, and we go through a part of Northeast Texas quite often. And it's always been that if I were ever in trouble or got stopped or had any road hazard, call my father-in-law or let somebody know that Charlie Fleming is my father-in-law. And anybody connected with the Texas Rangers or anyone with DPS would come to my aid. But when my father-in-law called and said, James, I know you're coming up, be careful, take such and such route, it kind of made me uncomfortable. And it made me think, okay, why isn't it enough now that I just mentioned Charlie Fleming's name, Company B, Texas Rangers? And by the way, my father-in-law is white. And Black guy going through North Texas, that's just one of the things we've always, had in the toolkit if we needed it. But why would that be an instance where Charlie would call me to make sure I was going to be okay? So that made me uncomfortable. And right after Scotty and I, we start talking, I just thought he was going to call me just to catch up on things, and I think he could see that I was pretty upset at that time. So those conversations have led us back to something we share in common, which is LMEA. Brett, would you do us a favor? Let's go to the PowerPoint. I want you to show that third slide for us. One of the key terms that we're going to talk about is equity, and sometimes people get that confused with equality. So I wanted to start off our conversation just by looking at this graphic. If you look on the left-hand side of your screen, we see 3 young people on some boxes. Look on the right side of the screen, there are 3 young people. There are some boxes, but we see something different on that right-hand side. The left-hand side is quantitative. Everybody has a box in that first frame. The next frame that we have, the boxes have been distributed a little bit differently. So we see, I think it's a little girl standing on a box here. Now she can see over the fence into the game. And there's a little young kid that couldn't see the game at all. Now he has 2 boxes he can see over. So we've taken that common resource, the box, and we have spread that evenly. At first, only 1, maybe 2 people can see the game. Now we've got all 3 being able to see over the fence in the second frame. Move over to the other side, the equity side of the screen here, the qualitative distribution. So we see that there are 3 people trying to watch the game. 1 can see fully over. 1 can maybe get a couple of eyeballs over. And then we have a young man in a wheelchair who obviously cannot see into the game. Next screen over, that distribution has taken a little bit. Go back, Brett. I'll tell you when to flip that. I'm sorry. You can see that they've taken 2 boxes. So little girls on 2 boxes. What have they done with that final box? They have built a ramp. So now the distribution is more qualitative, so that everyone has an equal opportunity to enjoy the game. And I wonder, what do the players see if they take a second to look over that outfield? What do they see on the other side of the fence? So that's something I want you to tuck in the back of your mind. Okay, let's go to the next screen now, Brett. Okay, so we've just talked, these common calls, the phone calls, and that common or uncommon ground, and then we've got to start figuring out, how does this really apply to LMEA, or is there a link to it? So there were a lot of phone calls over the summer, and it wasn't just to 1 or 2 people. It was across the state as much as we could get in touch with folks. And we sent out some surveys, tried to get some information back, and just put out some feelers to see, have we even thought about diversity, equity, and inclusion within our organization? And it was surprising to find out that yes, there have been some conversations, some very uncomfortable, sometimes heated conversations, and even some points where the conversation was the silent treatment, or the stick up the church finger. Lenore, you probably know what I'm talking about there. Stick up that church finger and just to leave the room, which is what we do not want in our organization. So, and talking with Scotty and Brett in particular, we figured, all right, if we're going to address this, we can't just talk about it. We have to come up with some action steps so that we can truly address the problems. And I'm not saying problems in a negative way, because problems that are unattended, yes, they turn negative. But problems that are worked on and you work towards solutions, that's the beauty of the growth process. And we want that for the LMEA. So the next thing we did was our next steps, action step was to put out a survey. And Brett, if you'll go to the next slide there, please. So after a few weeks of phone calls, emails, things of that nature, and unfortunately, we didn't have a lot of face-to-face, in-person contacts, but it was still beautiful just to be walking in the park and stop and get a phone call from somebody across the state, and we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we have tried to cover LMEA divisions, all of our districts, include our institutions of higher learning, and we even reached out to some former LMEA folks that are out of state now. One of the key people that I contacted was Miss Verna Ruffin. And if you're from my generation, you know that a lot of us, did a lot of our student teaching or observation with her. She is now superintendent of Waterbury Independent School District in, I think it's in Connecticut. And she isn't able to be with us right now, but boy, she is still interested to see what we are going to do here at LMEA. Also in Texas, a good friend of mine, Delton Brown. We taught together in the Fort Worth ISD. He's now in DeSoto. He's an LSU grad, and he is always kind of, dipping back to see what's happening in Louisiana. So I wanted to get a little bit of information from him as to how they're dealing with things in Texas. Also, there are a number of retirees, and we also have some newcomers that will be in on the council. So it's not just myself, Brett, and Scotty. It's representatives across the state for all of us in LMEA. So after we put out our survey, we started to see some common ground, some common themes that were occurring. And Brett said, okay, let's see how we can make this concrete. So we've developed our structural element. So Brett, if you'll go to our next screen here. The three main areas that we thought needed to address and not just talk about, but actually do something about, and things that could actually advance our organization, we thought in these three areas. There needed to be an element of mentorship, one of awareness and education, and one that definitely addressed underserved schools and institutions within the LMEA. Before we go any farther, Brett, if you will go to the next screen, these are a number of terms and concepts that occurred throughout our conversations as a council when we were forming. And you probably have heard these, I hope, on your own school campuses or within your departments if you're at higher education. These terms are trend terms, buzzwords that are not just within music education or in education in general. This is all across corporate America today. It is in churches. It is in everything that touches our American lifestyle. But we want to narrow in on how we can learn these terms and apply these to LMEA. A couple of them that really stick out in my mind are those main three: diversity, equity, and inclusion. Diversity is all of us, no matter who we are, what background we come from, what our orientations are, religious beliefs, political, any of that. We are just all in here, and we represent so many different stratas of society. Equity comes into play back, if you remember that little graphic I showed you. Are we playing on a level field? If not, what do we do to make that field level so that everyone has an equal opportunity to be in the game? And inclusion is a huge one for me. Inclusion is, let's say we invite folks to a dance, and people come to the dance, and we've got this diverse crowd, and we're making sure that everyone has a chance to play their own favorite songs, go to the same punch bowl. But when it comes time to do the line dance, the freeze, or the electric slide, or those kinds of things, are we going to get everybody out there on the dance floor? Or are we going to exclude some people like myself who have so-called no rhythm, but still want to get on that dance floor? So those are, I know that's anecdotal, but that's the kind of thing we really have to look at. Look down here at this last term, engagement. We're going to find out tomorrow that in our storytelling and in our panel discussion, there's some folks that have not felt engaged or invited to be engaged in LMEA. And that bothers me a lot, and I hope it bothers you too. So we need to address that so that when we come together as music educators, we're in a safe place where we can all feel comfortable and be part of the dance. Okay, the next slide for us, Brett. The first of our structural elements has to do with mentorship, and this is a list of people that have been on that subcommittee with us all summer and into the beginning of the school year, addressing some things that we think are important to LMEA considering mentorship. And over here, some working issues that we've listed on the right-hand side. Brett, I have your name highlighted here for everyone. Brett has been very, very instrumental in heading this subcommittee. So Brett, I'll turn it over to you for a little bit.
Thanks, Mr. Square. Such a humbling but yet exciting time for LMEA and this DEI committee. I just want to highlight some things that our subcommittee and the mentorship will be working on as we go along. We want to remind everybody that anything that we do here on these committees, whether it be advocacy or DEI, it's really a marathon. Nothing is a sprint. We're gonna work very hard to make sure that these are long-lasting effects within our organization and our state music departments. So the first thing we want to talk about in brief is just that our colleges and universities are going to play a big role in educating our first year, second year, third year students going into the profession. The idea is that is to start that mentorship program really starts in the undergrad program. As a mentor, if you have two roles here, you have a mentor and a mentee. So we're going to be seeking out mentors. These mentors would develop clinic sessions at our in-person and possible virtual LMEA conferences. They're going to be providing great literature for our young directors, such as flex band options, rescoring, and best practices with that. We're going to be giving them great resources, both online and printed. We're going to be helping them with assessment procedures. One of the great things we did last night for the first time ever, we had our charter members participate in our first ever Louisiana Music Adjudicators Association judge training. And that's going to move forward and really help with our young directors understand what does a judge go through, what's in their mind as we move through listening to these bands and choirs and orchestras perform on stage. What is in assessment procedures, how do we prepare the music? How do we organize the music? What do rehearsals look like? Getting our new teachers involved in LMEA related activities and topics is really important. A lot of these topics cross over. So a lot of our DEI topics that we talk about cross over into advocacy. Getting them plugged into our websites, our social media, our conference, solo festivals, our awards that we hand out, such as our newly instituted Robert L. Wilhite Award, the Standard of Excellence Awards that we hope to realize this year. We hope to even delve into some things such as financial advisement when applicable. We want to make sure that these students are coming in and understand what debt is and hope to get them to a point where they can become debt-free earlier rather than later. We want to concentrate on recruitment and retention, especially where choir programs are concerned. Our choir programs are such in dire straits where arts programs and choir programs are being cut at such a fast rate where they may be high school programs, but they really don't have a feeder program and they don't know where to turn. So therefore they may give up or look for other options. We want to help them through those times. We want them to use state and national curriculum standards as a guide. We want them to be able to lock into the new NAFME standards that have been put out since maybe 6 years ago. We want to help them with drumming up support from administration, counselors, supervisors in their local districts and parishes. We want out-of-state directors who are coming into Louisiana to be welcomed and to understand what LMEA can provide for them. And lastly, we want a lot of our teachers nowadays, it's no longer the situation where a teacher's going to go in and teach 4 classes of band. They're going to have to teach guitar. They're going to have a band teacher's going to have to teach choir. A choir teacher's going to have to teach general music, or even in the academic world, a band director might have to teach fine arts, or my first job, have to teach civics and free enterprise. How scary is that? We want to provide resources and support for these students. The biggest takeaway personally that I had from these mentor subcommittees discussions is that the committee did not want to dilute the expectations that we have for young directors and young directors in challenging situations, but rather help arm them with the many tools needed to meet the expectations and head the challenges head on. So thanks, Mr. Square, for allowing us to be a part of this and allowing me to share those notes about mentorship.
Thank you very much, Brett. Here's what's beautiful about it. And personally for me, you were one of my students when I was a young director, and I was still seeking answers and growing. And to see you now as a colleague, and even though you were one of my college students too, when I taught at the university level for a while, I think this is what it's about. What do we do to continue to grow our profession? I retired a couple of years ago from the podium, and folks tease that, well, I'm retired, but I'm not tired, so I'm still in it. And it's not any day that I don't look in that rearview mirror to see what's happening in classrooms in my area, or talk to friends across the state or even the nation, mentoring. So it's very good work that I think the committee is going to do there, Brett. Okay, Brett, if you would go to our next structural element, and I would like to invite Jessica to speak on behalf of the Subcommittee for Awareness and Education. So, Jessica.
Hello, everybody. And I would like to echo a lot of what Brett said and even what James said earlier. We had some really great discussions this summer, and the discussions that were had, they were tough, but they were awesome. And I'm so excited to be a part of this and to have been a part of all of the conversations and all the meetings that we've had, because there's been a lot of great work done, a lot of outstanding conversations. And I want to speak on behalf of what we worked on. So the element that I focused and that I felt very passionate about is focusing on awareness and education. And so we got a group of members that got together, and we formed a committee to discuss focusing on several different pillars that we feel that are important for diversity, equity, and inclusion in music education. And so throughout our discussions, we focused on several different things. One of those being our conference. We felt as though that we needed to market the conference as a truly unique experience and something very specific to Louisiana. And I know that right now we are in a difficult situation where we are, and we're not at the Crown Plaza in Baton Rouge, and we're not experiencing LMEA like we'd normally. But here we are, and this is unique for us, and I know that we're getting together here. And so what we would like to do is come up with a theme for our conference and develop it and let it be something that is specific to Louisiana. And it will lend us to the following things. We thought about and we talked about showcasing the talent in Louisiana by inviting local brass and jazz groups that showcase the talent that we have, and that they will perform at various events throughout the conference. So at meetings, or if we're having a get together, that there will be groups that we can feature, or even in the halls where we can have those things featured, so that students that are performing at the All-State ensembles can see those groups performing. We would also like to get some directors involved and maybe have get together where we can participate in jam sessions across all the disciplines, and then possibly even do something like a second line performance so that our students can see that, and then it brings us closer together. We want to communicate with music educators across the state to compile a list of topics that they would like to see presented at the conference, specifically focusing on having more presentations that will cater to directors and students from Title I, underserved, and urban schools. Also, one of the things that I really loved about our first meeting that we had is we had some collegiate directors come on, and my eyes were opened. And after actually discussions with Leonard, I hadn't even realized that we have universities that have not been or have not performed at LMEA. And so one of the things that we spoke a lot about was including collegiate performances from all across our state. So what we wanted to do is make contact with those directors from those universities, extend a personal invitation, let them know that not only are they welcome, but absolutely we want them to come and perform, because it's important that they are featured at our conference as well. Another pillar that we discussed was ensemble literature selection. It is so important, and this opened my eyes too as an educator, that I have not spent a lot of time putting historical pieces in front of my students, or even culturally responsive pedagogy or pieces that are culturally relevant in front of my students. And I think that's important that we get a list together from all of the outstanding music educators across our state, so that we can get that list and then disseminate it out to our membership. And then one of the other things we just spent a lot of time talking about was involving the Louisiana Department of Education and making them more aware about what we're doing. And so the goal is for administrators and the Department of Education to not only become more involved, but for them to have a seat at the table and get the opportunity to see the outstanding achievements of the top academic students in our state. Not just that, but also get to have conversations with the educators that are putting those students in those ensembles. So our discussions led us to the following things. We talked about maybe offering a luncheon for administration and the Department of Education, inviting them, and we'll have that luncheon at the conference. In addition to that, we're going to extend those invitations for them to speak and maybe even introduce the all-state ensembles, so that they are featured and they are there and they get to see the outstanding work that we're putting on here in Louisiana. And then we want to have like a superintendent roundtable discussion, inviting several superintendents to come in and participate. And the goal in mind is in hopes for us to not only educate the administrators and Department of Education, but really bring us together so that we're a part of the same team, because that's really what it's about, is getting everybody on board together. Like I said, we had a lot of great discussions this summer. My eyes were open, and there was a lot of friendships built. And I'm very excited about what we're doing and what we're working on. And that's what my group presented this summer.
Thank you, Jessica. And before we go on, I want to make sure everyone understands there is a live chat room going on. So if you have a question or a comment, please, feel free, type in that question, give us your comment. That's how we can better serve you all. Okay. The next structural element that we want to introduce. This is the underserved schools element. And Brett, if you will go to our next slide for us, just so we can see some of those committee members. And also on the right-hand side, some of the working issues that they were addressing. Okay, so this is our mentorship. So if we go to the next one, Brett, this is what Jessica just discussed with us. And the next element that we'll talk about is your next slide, which is the underserved schools element. And Leonard Holden, I have still waiting for the chance for us to actually be in the same room so that we can bond even closer than we've started through all this technological communication. So Leonard, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I would like for you to share with us some of what we've done on underserved schools.
Well, I don't know if you guys can hear me. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes.
Okay. Well, this is a feat for me because technology has never been my friend. So I want to thank you all for that. But underserved schools is a big issue for us in the underserved community. I think what's really missing is real advocacy and advocacy on the local, the state, and even national level. I believe if so many things that happens for all of our programs that's good for us, but we have to think about the things that and we enjoy those freedoms and we enjoy those perks. We don't understand someone across the world lives a completely different way, and it's easy for us to be a little numb to what reality might be for them. And so I don't think people who are at a disadvantage are looking for a handout. They're looking for understanding. And I believe if we start in a way, there's a thing that we do here in the Shreveport-Bossier area, and it's called Bandery. And it's a marching festival. It's not a competition or anything like that. And bring supportive of one another, and it's no big, it's no pressure, and it's a little uncomfortable. I would be the first person to say that for me and my group, but at the same time, I think those are the steps that we need to take to move the ball a little bit. I heard someone say that in our lives, we're not going to always make it to the finish line, but it's our job to run when we have the baton in our hand. And so I want to commend everyone for what we're doing with this. And I just want, what I desire for this is that people have an understanding of people who don't live like them, who don't teach like them, who hadn't graduated from the same type of university, that they respect and how they view things in this world. So I think if we had real advocacy on the local, state, and national level, that would be one. If we had a way of getting legislation to change where we would have Title I schools have monies allocated specifically for the arts and music, and not just be to the principal to decide where those monies are spent on the high school and middle school and even elementary school level.
Yes, sir.
I think that would be something that's great. And I think if LMEA, we would have a universal curriculum. I remember when I first started teaching in Louisiana, that it was really and, hey, do your best. I still don't know if we have a curriculum. I think the last time they actually had a curriculum in our district is in the year 1998. And so those are some of the things and not just a conversation that makes us feel good for the moment. And the people underserved are not looking for someone to hide their disdain with platitudes, to them. They're not looking for that. They want to be seen for who they are. And what I've noticed with my students and our students at Southwood High School is they're very resilient students, and they can do anything that you put in front of them. Is if they're given the opportunity and they're given the basic tools, they will rise to the occasion for that. So we have a work environment that I'm pretty lucky that we just try our best to work together, and it's not always great days, but we have a commitment that, hey, these students are the most important thing on this campus, and our job is to bring out the absolute best in them. And so those are some of my thoughts on that, and I don't know if everyone would agree with me. I think that's what.
Okay, thank you, Lenore. Amen. 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 Sorry, it was a little spotty with audio, but I think we all understand where Lenore is coming from. And if you don't, then please stay engaged and find out where he's coming from, where underserved schools are coming from, because we're all headed to the same place. I think that was his message, is that we're in it for our students. And the way for us to get there together goes back to what Jessica and Brett talked about, that mentorship and getting aware and educated as to what needs to happen, not just for us as music educators, but ultimately what advances our students. Okay, Brett, if you would go to the next slide that is entitled Key Points for Diversity. And those of you that are viewing, if you would just take a second just to think about these points here. Diversity, who all is in the room where it happens? And I know I kind of ripped that off from Hamilton because that's just the lexicon that so many of us are speaking in these days. But think about this. You know, you step into a band room, you know, who are those students? What is the makeup of that band? And I'm going to tell on my dad here. My dad still asks me to this day, not just about band. I'm a special ed inclusion teacher now, but he always wants to know, well, son, how many blacks were there? And that just, and I'm gonna just tell it, you know, it just kind of like sets me off because I don't see it that way. But, you know, since we've talked about diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's made me kind of hone in a little bit. I've always told him, you know, I don't count heads that way, but I can tell you how many piccolos I have in the marching band, how many bass drums, how many tubas I've got in symphonic, how many kids are going to play grade 1 and grade 2 solos, because those are the kinds of demographics that have been important to me as the director. But through this lens of introspection, it's making me look at things in a different light too. So look at these hot topics here. You know, we've got to widen our comfort zones. You'll probably hear Dr. Tim say that if you tune in tomorrow, every time I go to a Dr. Tim clinic, that is one of the things that he talks about, because that is where we grow, folks, outside of your comfort zone. That's where the magic is. So we need to, you know, keep our button on that hot topic. Second one, different, not less. I'm going to hold up a cup here. I don't know if you can see this with the camera. I hope that you can. And here's these words here. Autism dad. Let's see if we can get that there. My son's in the other room here. He's a high-functioning autistic adult. I've been asked to come out of retirement to work with our special ed department with my school. And trust me, all of you directors out there, you know that you have some special ed students who are going to be in your ensembles. So one of the things that we need to do is look forward and remember that all of us are different, but none of us are any less than anyone else in that room. So please keep that point in mind. Brett, if we'll go on to the next key point. Let's for a second, let's wrap our heads around equity. You know, fair treatment and access and opportunities for advancement. You know, just think about on the national scene what has happened recently with our electoral process. You know, the Supreme Court appointments. Even I'm an Air Force vet. You know, we have the first African-American chief of staff of the Air Force. I went to the Air Force Academy right out of high school. Just a few weeks ago, the first black superintendent was placed at the Air Force Academy. You know, and I'm getting chills just thinking about this. We had something called the Way of Life Committee that was for underserved students at that national institution. And I always thought, well, you know, I don't need to go to that. But thinking back on it 40 years from now, it's like, I'm glad that they did, because it's opening my eyes that it's not just this little narrow world that I see and the way I see it in my band room and my comfort zone. So it's a place for us to grow. The hot topic here is discovering the root causes of outcome disparities. We all come from different walks of life, from different home situations, different school situations. How does that affect us overall in our outcomes as teachers and musicians? And how does that affect our students? Are those things that we can change as root causes? Probably not, but we can certainly change the growth that can come from that. What is the fruit that is going to be, that we're going to bear? So those are some things that we need to bear in mind. And if we go to our next slide, Brett, these are key points for inclusion. And I know that we've talked about these all throughout the summer, and we will continue to talk about all of these areas in our subsequent conversations. Inclusion, right here. Do we create an environment where everyone is genuinely welcomed, respected, supported, and valued? Not just on the surface, but can we dig deep down into our own being and genuinely respect people that are different than us, a different walk of life, or a different genre of music? I remember years ago when I made the All-American Band, in an interview, it's like, oh, so what's your favorite style of music? And the interviewer had already put down jazz. And when I said, I really like opera and classical music, he just kind of stopped, because it was not the expected answer here in my little small town, me looking like I am. So it's one of the things that we have to think about here in this hot topic. There is in all of us, and it's nothing bad, it just happens, but there's this implicit and unconscious bias that happens. What we have to do is change that unconscious to conscious bias. When we walk in a room, we are at our convention, if we were there, we're all music educators. So let's find that common ground, that common subject that we share, and then let's grow from that and let everyone have their input, their say, their seat at the table without feeling marginalized. I hope that makes some sense to everyone and causes you to maybe think about it when you put on your bunny slippers and go to bed tonight. These things have been on my mind for a long time, and Brett, Jessica, and Leonard, Scotty earlier. I'm glad that I have a chance to just finally put a voice to all of this that I've been jotting down on paper and thinking through. And I want you all to look at this next slide here. Here are the next steps right here at the virtual conference concerning DEI. Tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock, very nice roundtable discussion that's going to be led by Deb Confredo. I'll be there myself to kind of keep things moving along, but you're going to hear from LMEA members, past and future, or past and present. I know there's going to be a couple of future ones listening in. My nephew is first year college student. He wants to be a music educator, and I've told him, look, you need to register for the conference. You need to get in on this now, because Brett, here's mentorship right there, starting at ground level. On Sunday morning is another roundtable discussion. This one is going to be led by Alyssa Jones. And this is more of our collegiate panel that is going to be discussing what is happening or can happen in their music programs now under the umbrella of mentorship that can start to advance those undergrads before they walk out of that school with that degree in music ed and get certified by the state. They can walk into a classroom already with those lenses on and wide open and understand we have to meet the needs of all of our students. And at the same time, we'll be there to meet the needs of the growth of those young teachers. I've talked a lot here, so I'm going to put my lip zipper on, Brett, and I'm going to turn it over to you and Jessica and Leonard if you all have anything that you want to share. And I think we can even look in the chat room and see if we've had any viewers that have some questions for us.
We had a 5-minute warning a few minutes ago, so I know we're running out of time. A lot of great comments in the chat room that I can see, Mr. Square, just being positive and some amens every once in a while.
Excellent.
If you'd like to know any more information, everybody, about what we're doing with DEI, just consistently look on the LMEA website page. It's constantly being updated about these events. You can also contact us directly through email, phone call. We'd be happy to talk to you. And if you don't have our contact, find somebody who does, and we would love to share the news of this committee.
I did want to mention, if we have a second, I think there was one thing that I forgot to touch on, but we did talk about inviting or incorporating United Sound in some degree, not only educating other directors across the state about getting United Sound involved in your schools, and hopefully at some point getting those students involved in at LMEA. And so for those of you directors that are on right now, if you're not familiar with what United Sound is, I can tell you probably my most impactful teaching experience happened last year when I was given those students and told, hey, could you teach them just one day a week? And that was my favorite class. And it was absolutely worth it. I would have taught them 5 days a week for multiple times, a day. They're just incredibly, it's a blessing to teach those students. So if you don't know anything about United Sound, check it out. I think we need to feature students. Those students need to have a voice. And I think that's absolutely important for Louisiana music educators to know about that.
And Mr. Square, I know that you would want to share this. If you want to be a part of what we're doing here with the DEI committee, please reach out, especially vocal teachers and elementary teachers. We would love to have you. We would love to have your voice on this committee and spread that out throughout the entire state. We've got representation throughout the state. We could always use more.
Yes, good. And Brett, thank you for mentioning that. And I want to emphasize again, this is not the DEI's committee to ourselves. This is a council that is put in place and is forming to help us, all of us in the LMEA, all of our students that we have presently and hopefully we'll have in the future. So please reach out, because if you don't reach out, we'll reach out for you. We'll find you. We need you to be part of this. Leonard, you got anything before we have to shut it down?
Well, just on a personal level, I just want to thank you all. You guys, it's obvious that you're all decent people, and I think we need to be aggressive about decency and letting decency be the rule of the day. And I think that'll put us in a great place. So I want to thank you all for being really decent people. Thank you all.
Thanks. And before we go, here's another plug for our other two DEI sessions: 10 o'clock Saturday morning, 10 o'clock Sunday morning. So we hope that you'll be there. Thank you all. And I'll turn it over to Brett to close us out.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for being with us. Thanks, Mr. Walker, for introducing us and your leadership throughout our LMEA. Guys, have a wonderful weekend. We love all of you. Just sit back, enjoy the show.
Bye, y'all.
Thanks.